Hello and welcome to part two of negative yes no key questions. I had to read that slowly. Or NYNK writing exercise. So last week, or should I say 2 weeks ago, we learned how to form the yes no questions, right? And I think most of you got it. You had a few mistakes, but I think most of you were able to get it. And good job. Good job. Now, we are going to move on to asking or how to form WH questions. And it's a little bit complicated, more complicated than yes no questions, but hopefully we'll be able to sort things out and make things clear for you. Okay, at the same time, we're going to cover the two other tenses that we learned last week. Remember that? So, was, and at the same, not was is not a tense, but it's special, as I talked about last week. And also the past continuous. So, let's get started. Well, first of all, we always ask this question: why are we doing this? Why do we do it? Well, there are several reasons I want us to look at this. Look at these reasons. This exercise is a natural way for you to improve your grammar, both in speaking and writing. As you may have noticed already, we are not even talking about grammar. So this is a natural way for you to learn how to play around with grammatical structures in a sentence, to manipulate them. It will help you formulate questions and write sentences. Our goal is not just you'll be able to do the exercise after this video, but that it will influence the way you write, your compositions, your writing projects, or anything you're writing. That as you write your sentences with whatever assignments you're working on, your sentences will be better in terms of structure. And of course, questions. We always formulate questions in speaking and in writing. So it will be a good thing to know how to formulate or to form these questions in English. And lastly, it will help you become more aware of grammatical structures without studying grammar rules. So awareness is very, very important. Of course, we will be discussing, I will be teaching you later on some grammar rules, parts of speech, and everything else. But I want us to be familiar with the different grammatical structures long before we get there. So by the time we get to discussing these or grammar rules, you'll be a bit familiar with the different grammatical structures through this negative yes no key questions lesson and exercises. All right, so with these things in mind, let's get started, or let's get moving. So what are our WH questions in English? Of course, the most common, we have who, what, when. Okay, let me just remove my face. Oh, did it? Okay, thank you. So we've got who, what, when, where, why, how. You've got to memorize them, okay? Actually, even without memorizing them, you'll be able to remember them. And of course, we have the more advanced WH questions. We've got whom, whose, and which. And these three things we are not going to cover because we're gonna address the basic WH questions first in this video. Okay, so let's try to talk about them in details. Okay, for who and what, they're very similar because we use them for nouns and pronouns. For nouns and pronouns. This is the only, or these are the only questions in the WH questions list that we use with nouns. That's interesting, right? And nouns and pronouns, later on we'll talk more about this, but this I have to mention it now. Nouns and pronouns act as subjects and objects in a sentence. Did you notice that? If you haven't, then it's time for you to open your eyes. When you read a sentence, ask yourself, what's the subject of the sentence? Oh, it's a noun. Or if it's not a noun, it's a pronoun. It's always the case. Let's look at this example. Jana loves apples. Jana loves apples. Okay, what's the subject here? Jana. That's right. And what's the object? Apples. So object, or specifically direct object, answers the question who or what. Like for example, Jana loves what? Jana loves who? So whatever the answer is in those questions will be your direct object. Okay, so how do we form WH or who and what questions from this sentence? So when you form WH questions, specifically for this exercise, it will be a bit backwards. Okay, we're going to do it backwards. We're going to reverse it. Instead of asking the question first, you think of the answer. So in this case, okay, I want the answer to be Jana. So what would be my question? It's a person. She's a person. So I should use who. It becomes then, who loves apples? Who loves apples? Jana would be the answer. You see, when you ask a who question, it's actually more simple than the other questions because you just have to replace the subject with a who, right? You keep everything. Loves, the verb is the same. Loves. The object is the same. Apples, right? So it would be one of the easiest questions you will ask. Who? Now let's look at what. Now what question can we ask in this sentence? Let's say I want to focus on apples, right? That's the only what that can be answered. That's the only word that can be answered with what in this sentence. So the question becomes, what does Jana love? Apples. Okay. Now, notice that we had to change the structure. Because the order of the sentence got changed. Jana, which is the subject, comes down or goes to the, what do you call this? goes to another part of the sentence, right? If that's the case, then you have to use an auxiliary verb. Now, why did we use does? Why not did? Okay, look at your verb. Your verb is loves, right? It's singular. So if that's the case, you ask, what's the tense? Remember from last week's lesson or from 2 weeks ago's lesson? So what's the tense? It's present. Now for present, we use do or does. And since the subject is Jana, it's singular, it becomes does. Alright? So what does Jana love? Apples. Okay, let's move on. Now, what about this sentence? I cleaned my room last week. I cleaned my room last week. Okay, now what who question? Oh, let's start with what this time, okay? What question can we ask? So we can say, okay, I want the answer to be my room. My room. So it would become, what did I clean last week? Did you get that? Okay, I posted something else, so you're not going to see that. But listen to me. What did I clean last week? So I have to use did this time because my verb is cleaned, right? So it's in past tense, so I have to use did. Okay, now there's another what question we can ask here, and this is what I want to point out. What question, we can also use it for activities. For activities. So we can also ask here, what did I do last week? What did I do last week? The answer would be, I cleaned my room. What did you do yesterday? I played computer games. Or I did my assignment. Right? It can be for activities also. So even though cleaned is a verb, we can still ask what. We can still ask what. Remember that. And of course, for who, what would be the obvious question? Yeah, go ahead, say it. Who cleaned my room last week? Easy, right? You didn't need to change anything. Okay, get away from there. Sorry, my face is getting in the way. Okay. So who cleaned my room last week? And the answer would be, I did. That would be the short answer for speaking. I did. I cleaned my room last week. Okay? So that would be for who and what. Now let's move on to when, where, and okay, before anything else, move right here. Okay. Oh, I think it's better if I put it right here. When, where, and why. Okay, so I put them in the same category because we can use them with adverbs, clauses. When you say clauses, there's a subject and a verb. So a sentence is a clause. There's a subject and a verb. And we can also use it with prepositional phrases. Now, you don't need to be confused right now. Just look at this example. Okay, let's say we have this sentence. She went to the Philippines last year because she got accepted in IGSL. Okay, let's try to ask these questions. First question, when? What would be your answer? That's right. Last year. Last year. Okay, so that will be your answer. And what would be your question? Now try it. It's the same thing we did with what? When. Now what's the verb? Went. So what tense is went? Past tense, that's correct. It's simple past. So in that case, you have to use a did. So use did. So when did the subject she go to the Philippines? That's right. If you got that correctly, very good. When did she go to the Philippines? Last year. That's right. Okay. Now, this is one thing I want to point out. As much as possible, try to keep the original grammatical form when you ask a WH question. The same thing you do with yes/no question. You try to keep the grammatical form, right? So in this case, we didn't change anything. We just changed went to did go. Did go. We just added a did, so we had to change went to go into its base form. Remember that? So that's pretty much what all that we did. So now let's try with where. Where? What would be answerable by where in this sentence? She went to the Philippines last year because she got accepted in IGSL. So by the way, last year is an adverb. It's an adverb. Okay, adverbs answer the question when. Actually, when, where, why, how. Those are all answered by adverbs. Okay. Yes, you have there the Philippines, but you might want to include to also. Okay, let's try. Where did, yes, that's right. It's the same thing with when. Where did she went? No. Where did she go? Where did she go? To the Philippines. So when you answer a question like this, you need the preposition go. Did you notice that? Like when you ask or whenever you use go, there's always a preposition to. Go to the Philippines, go to Manila, go to Vietnam. Yeah, so there's always a to, except when you use other prepositions like go outside. You don't say go to outside. Or go there. You don't say go to there. Or home. You don't say go to home. So there are exceptions. Okay, so did you get that? I hope you did. All right, let's go to why. Why? Now, why is pretty obvious, right? What part of the sentence would be answerable by why? That's right, because then you have to complete the whole thing. Because you got accepted in IGSL. So what would be our question? Now the same grammatical pattern. Why did she go to the Philippines last year? Because she got accepted in IGSL. Okay, did you notice that? I mean, did you get that? Did you get that correctly? Okay, it's not so difficult, right? Because you use the original grammatical patterns contained in the sentence. Right? Okay. Now let's go to how. Okay, now for how, we use prepositional phrases, especially by. It usually begins with by. Let's look at this example. Okay, we want to add some additional information to the same sentence. She went to the Philippines last year because she got accepted in IGSL. Now, she got some money to buy her tickets by raising support from her friends. Okay, as you look at the second sentence, don't look at the first. As you look at the second sentence, what part of this sentence is answerable by how? Okay, that's right. By raising support from her friends. By raising support from her friends. There you go. So you just learned another grammatical pattern. So whenever you ask the question how, usually it can be answered by by. By and then ing, we call this a gerund. Ing, by raising support from her friends. So there you go. That's a pattern that you can use whenever you talk about by. Okay, now, how do we ask a question? We ask a question by doing something like this. Okay. How? All right. Where is your... So this is our question should be this one, right? She got some money to buy her tickets. How? How did she do that? Yeah, we can ask that question. How did she do that? Or if you want to keep the grammatical structures contained here, what's the verb? That's correct. It's got, and it is in the past tense. So what do? Yeah, use did. Use did. So how did she got? Is that correct? No, you have to change it to get. How did she get some money to buy her tickets? Now, some students would do something like this. How did she get some money to buy her tickets? By raising support from her friends. Be careful with that. Don't answer the question in your question. So, so don't include the answer in your question. So the question should only be, how did she get some money to buy her tickets? And the answer is by raising support from her friends. Okay, did you see that? Again, we were faithful to the grammatical structure. Now, it's not always the case. Sometimes you have to be unfaithful to the grammatical structure. You have to change it a little bit because sometimes it won't make sense. I'll show you some example later on. But if you can, as much as possible, try to be faithful in using the original grammatical structure. Okay? Alright, so we are done with the WH questions. Now we're going to look at 3 examples. But let me just stop it right here so that we can take some break. Alright, so did you take some break? I hope you did, because it will be a good thing to refresh your mind after having learned some things. And right now what we're going to do is we're going to practice with some sentences, 2 of which come from Hudson Taylor's biography. Okay, let's move on. Okay, example 1, before anything else, I know my face is going to get in the way, so let me just move that right there. Okay, we're ready. Okay, yeah, I have to end this presentation, I realize, because I'm going to be typing things up. Okay, let's read the sentence. He was excited when she agreed, and her father gave his permission. So when you read chapter 7 of Hudson Taylor's biography, this is talking about Marion. Is it Marion? Yeah, I think. I hope I got it right. Yeah, Marion. So she agreed to Mary Hudson Taylor, yay! And her father also gave his permission for them to marry. But let's see what's gonna happen. Okay, let's start off with the negative sentence. So again, first of all, you have to choose which part you're going to manipulate. Okay, because you cannot change everything to negative. Okay, where is your main clause in this sentence? Yeah, definitely this is not your main clause because it begins with a when. Remember, we talked about that in the class. So this is your like when clause. It's talks about time, right? Now this part is your, let's underline that. This part is your main clause. So this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to manipulate. Okay, he was, how do we do it? How do we change it to negative? Yes, not excited. Did you notice it's not exciting? Because some of you would say, I am so exciting. Well, when you talk about feelings, you should use ed. I'm frustrated. I was frustrated. I was excited. I was tired. Yeah, start noticing that. Start noticing that. He was not excited when she agreed and her father gave his permission. Okay? Now, what about our yes question? Yes, no question. So, again, do not touch the other parts of the sentence. Just manipulate the first part or the main part, not the first part, the main part of the sentence. Okay, what should we do if our verb, where's our verb? That's correct, it's was. So we just put it at the beginning. Was he excited when she agreed and her father gave his permission? Yeah, when you ask a yes-no question, at the end you have the rising tone. That's when you signal, that's how you signal to whoever you're talking to that you are asking a yes-no question. Was he excited when she agreed and her father gave his permission? And the answer, of course, is yes, he was. Or, no, he was not. No, he wasn't, for speaking. Oh, it should be here. Okay, so we are done with the yes-no question. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay, now we're going to ask key questions. The same sentence. Okay, what would be our key question? Here we go now. So this is where the rubber meets the road. Okay, let's apply what we've learned in the previous slides. The easiest. What will be the easiest question here? That's right. Who was excited when she agreed and her father gave his permission? And the answer is... I'll just put the answer. Oh, it's okay. He, or we can say Hudson. Yeah. So you don't need to spell out or to complete the sentence, especially if it's for speaking. Now, what other question can we ask here? There is a when. So there is your clue. If you see a when, what question should you ask? Why? No. Yes, that's right. So when, what would be the question? So the answer we're looking for is this: when she agreed and her father gave his permission. So we're going to try to ask, when was he excited? When was he excited? Yeah. So he was excited. Basically, you just write the whole sentence. You can just copy it, but I encourage you to type it up so that your brain will be accustomed to different different structures in English. He was excited when she agreed and her father gave his permission. Okay, so, well, in the exercise, you only have to come up with one question, but I'm trying to show you how to come up with different questions for practice. Is that it? Is that all that we can ask? Can we ask something else? Yeah, you can see. Are you looking at the same word that I am looking at right now? This is the word I'm looking at. You have to ask this, right? You cannot afford not to ask this. This is a key. This is a key word in the sentence. Excited. What is excited? Yeah, it's a feeling, right? So what question should we ask? What question should we ask in this case? Let me just adjust this. Okay, if I want to stick to the original grammatical pattern, I would say something like this. How was he when she agreed and her father gave his permission? And the answer would be excited, or he was excited. Okay, can I just remove this? Thank you. Right? So you can see we did not change any of the original structure. How was he? So we just switched it. He was he? Did you get that? But the problem with this is not what we normally ask when we talk about feelings. What do we normally ask? What do we normally ask when we talk about feelings? So in this case, this is the example I was talking about. This was the example I was talking about earlier, remember? That sometimes you have to do a bit of a compromise and you cannot keep the original structure of the sentence. So you have to change it a little bit. So what should we do? So we can say, how did he feel when she agreed and her father gave his permission? Yes, we are trying to deviate from the original grammatical structure, right? And it's okay. It's okay. So that's why I was telling you, as much as possible, try to stick to the original grammatical structure. But if it's not, and there is a better question to ask, that what I mean by better is a more usual question we ask, then go ahead, ask that question, even though you will not be faithful to the grammatical structure. Okay? But do this only when it's necessary. Okay, because remember, why do we do this for? What do we do this for? We're trying to practice manipulating the grammatical structure. Okay? So if you can stay faithful to the grammatical structure. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. Okay. After several weeks at home, Hudson received news that his cousin Tom in London was sick with rheumatic fever. So it's a long sentence. That's why I chose this, because I want us to practice with a more complicated sentence. We call this in English, let me see, if it is a complex sentence. Yes, it is a complex sentence. We're going to learn the different types of sentences much later in the course. But for now, yes, it is complicated. It's not complicated. Yes, it is complicated, but it's a complex sentence technically. All right, so normally we can see the subject at the beginning of the sentence, right? But remember, if the sentence begins with after, before, or any preposition or any conjunction, then the subject is not there. Okay, you can see here, there's no subject here. After several weeks at home, what? So, what? After several weeks at home is merely talking about the when part of the sentence. So, where is the subject and the verb? The main part or the main clause, as we say, the main sentence. Okay, it's right here. Hudson received news. What? I'm already asking a question. What news? That his cousin Tom in London was sick with rheumatic fever. Okay, now since we found the main sentence, so now we can move on to writing the negative. Okay. Well, let me try to play around with the sentence. You can also do this, by the way. So what if I want to put the main sentence in the first part of a sentence? Yeah, you can do that. Hudson, what's the verb? Received. That's right. Received. Now, what tense is that? Yeah, of course, it's past tense because this was in the past. Received. Now, what should we do if we have a simple past verb? Use did. Did plus base form. Yeah, you're getting it. Hudson did not received. Is that right? Okay, base form. Did not receive news that his cousin Tom in London was sick with rheumatic fever. I don't think we need to capitalize that. Do we need to capitalize that? Okay, now I realized I cannot put this after several weeks at home. I cannot put it right here. I was not receive its sick with rheumatic fever after several weeks at home. Yeah, so it's better to keep it here. Okay, I was wrong. Sorry about that. But at least we gave it a try. So it should be here. Because if you put it here, then you might think that his cousin Tom got sick after several weeks at home. No. What happened was he received the news after several weeks at home. So yeah, we can put it here. Hudson did not receive news after several weeks at home that his cousin Tom in London was sick with rheumatic fever. Okay, we are done with negative. Let's go to yes, no question. Again, don't touch the other parts of the sentence. So after several weeks, so again, we use did because our verb is receive. Did Hudson receive news that his cousin Tom in London was sick with rheumatic fever? Oh, sorry. And the answer is, so yes, he was. Is that right? No. Yeah, that's correct. It should be, that's incorrect. It should be yes, he did. Or no, he did not. Yeah, of course, the he here is not Tom. The he here is Hudson. Okay, we're done with yes, no question. Let's go to key question. Okay, I want to maximize this. Okay, now what question can you think about? Okay, I want to skip the who because that's so easy, right? You can just say, who received the news that his cousin Tom in London was sick with rheumatic fever? Yeah, that will be easy. So I want to skip that. Okay, let's go to the object of the sentence. So again, let me highlight this. Hudson received news. So I want to ask about this. So if we are asking about news, and this is, remember, received what? News. So it's a noun, and it's at the same time, it's the object, direct object of received. So in this case, it will become, what would be our question? What? Okay. So if you have, if your verb is received, then you have to use did. So what did? Okay, and then what did Hudson receive? Yes, that's it. What did Hudson receive? And what did he receive? News. Yeah, that's it. News. but of course that's grammatically correct, but it doesn't make sense, right? What would be the next question? What news? What news? News that his cousin Tom was sick. Okay? Yeah, you heard me. You heard me ask that question. So what if I want to ask a specific question because there is a specific answer in the sentence? So in this case, I can say, what news did Hudson receive? By the way, you can also include this, huh? You can also include this. So again, you can put it here or you can put it here. Let's put it here. After several weeks at home. Or in this case, for this one, I want to put it at the beginning. after several weeks, comma. So if it's at the beginning of the sentence, you put a comma. Don't forget that. What news did Hudson receive? So the same answer. News that his cousin Tom, sorry, I forgot to capitalize that. It's a name, not his. His cousin Tom was sick. Okay, and did you notice I didn't put a period? Because it's not a sentence. You don't have a subject and a verb. It's just a phrase. There you go. Is that clear so far? Okay, another question. Let's try one more time. What other question can we ask that can be answered in the sentence? I forgot to mention that. Make sure that when you ask a WH question, it should be answerable in the sentence. Don't ask a question that you cannot answer in the sentence, okay? Because we will do that later on. We will do that later on with the Bible. But in this case, we are at the beginning stage. We're trying to play around with grammatical structures. Innate, or when you say innate, that means it's in the sentence. Grammatical structures that are in the sentence. Okay, so what other question can we ask? Yeah, so perhaps you can ask about when. I want the answer to be after several weeks at home. Okay? So I can say when. So again, when did Hudson receive news that his cousin Tom was sick? The answer would be after several weeks. Did you get that? The same grammatical structure. So we have to use did because there is it's in simple past. You don't use did for who if you're asking about the subject. Like in this case, let me just show you. I said it was going to be easy, but just to show you who, so Hudson is the subject, right? So in this case, I don't need to use did. Who received news? Who received news? That's it. That's it. So I don't need to put did because it is the subject. Okay. I think we're done. Yeah, in this exercise, I want you to try to focus on, like, I could ask about Tom, right? I could ask about Tom, who was sick with rheumatic fever. That's also okay. But as much as possible, I want you to focus on the main part of the sentence. Okay? So that, but of course, if you want to give it a try, just make sure it's correct. But maybe at the beginning, you can just focus on the main part of the sentence. Okay. Oh, I learned something new. I can actually annotate. Oh, I can annotate with Loom. it's funny. It's just accidental discovery. Anyway, let's move on because it's getting late for me. let's move on to the last one. Okay, this is not in chapter 7. I just made it up. While exciting things were happening in China, Hudson was thinking of going there immediately. Yeah, so in this story in chapter 7, you're going to find out some exciting things that were happening in China at that time. Okay, again, our question, since it's a long sentence, it's a complex sentence, where is the main sentence? So definitely not this, because it starts with a while. The main sentence doesn't have a conjunction. I mean, it can have a conjunction, and you can use that, and, but you can't use conjunctions like while. So this right here is our main sentence. Hudson was thinking of going there immediately. So don't be fooled by that, huh? Just because it's at the beginning of the sentence doesn't mean that it is the main sentence. You have to look at it carefully. Okay, so since we know the main sentence now, we are going to try to manipulate this. Let's start with negative. Okay, Hudson was what? What should we do in this case? So our verb is was thinking. Was thinking. So just put was not thinking. That's it. Simple, right? Of going there immediately. Of course, it's not the full sentence. I mean, so we still have the other part of the sentence while exciting things were happening in China. But you can notice that this is already a complete sentence. Did you notice that? But if I want to add an additional detail, like in this case, when, then I can do this just like what I did here. So I can put it at the beginning of the sentence. Yeah, no, I can copy it. Or, just to be different, I can put it right here. And I don't need to use a comma. So this is how we extend sentences in English. Alright, let's move on to the yes-no question. Now, how do we ask a question with something like this? Okay, we begin with was. Then the subject was Hudson thinking of going there immediately. Yeah, let's put that at the beginning. And the answer would be yes. Yes, what? Yes, he did. No. Yes, he was. Remember, was and did are enemies. You never use them together. Okay? You never use them together. So if you use was, don't use did. Yes, he was. Or, what would be the negative? No, he was not. Or no, he wasn't. You should go right here. Okay, take a deep breath. We're almost done. We're almost done. So we now go to WH. Key question. Okay, so right off the bat, what question do you want to ask? While exciting things were happening in China. So I don't want to focus on this because this is not the main part of the sentence. Focus on the main part of the sentence. So right here, ask from here. Yes, you can ask a question about the whole thing, but don't go into the details. Like what were happening in China, you don't need to ask that. You can just go to the main sentence. All right, just to show you, again, the most simple, who, and the answer, of course, would be Hudson. Who, okay, fill in the sentence. Who blank. You try, just try. Okay, I hope you got it. Who was thinking of going there immediately? Okay. And the answer would be Hudson. Of course, you can include this part. Who was thinking of going there immediately while exciting things were happening in China? So you can see who is very easy. You don't need to change any grammatical structure. And what other questions can you ask? Yeah, what other questions can we ask here? What about when? That's right. So since we have a time clause, while exciting things were happening in China, we can ask the question when. So when was Hudson thinking of going there immediately? So did you see? It's easier than did, because you don't need to add did. You just have to use whatever is there. Was thinking, and you just put Hudson and between. Right? It's just like the yes no question. So when was Hudson, the subject, thinking of going there? Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, you can also, it can also be answered with immediately, right? I didn't realize that. So you can remove this and the answer would be immediately. But okay, I'll show you something else later on. But the original answer I was thinking of was while exciting things were happening in China. Okay? So when was Hudson thinking of going there immediately while exciting things were happening in China? Okay. Now let's try to ask about this immediately. This is a bit advanced, but let me just try to show you how to do it. So the question for that, if the answer you're looking for is immediately, then you can ask how soon was Hudson thinking of going there? Yeah, and the answer, of course, is immediately. How soon? What other ways can you answer this question? How soon? How soon will you go to the Philippines? How soon will you come here? That's my question. How soon will you come to the Philippines? So you can say as soon as a vaccine becomes available, right? You can say that. Or as soon as God allows. As soon as the COVID pandemic is over, right? Let's pray for that. Let's pray for that. Yeah, it's getting lonelier here each day. I wish you could all be here. I wish you could all be here sooner than we are expecting. Okay? What else? Can we think of something else? Yeah, you can also ask what. Yeah, you can also ask what in this case. And I want to show you how you can do that. Okay, I have to remove this. Okay, I want to, let's say, I want the answer to be this: going there immediately. So, what would be a question that can be answered with going there immediately? Okay, this is a common question, so please remember this. So, what was Hudson thinking of? What was Hudson thinking of? Yeah. So, for example, you want to ask someone, what are you thinking of? Oh, I'm thinking of my assignments. I'm thinking of my problems. Yeah. What was Hudson thinking of? So I want to show you. I wanted to show you this because we are using the original grammatical structure. You see an of here, so you also use an of here. Right? Now I thought. So remember, we were talking about what are the answers for what. I thought we can only use nouns and pronouns. So if the answer is going there, of course, going to China immediately, going is a verb. Why is it? Why is that the answer for a what question? Yeah. So going is a verb only if there is a be verb. Was going, are going. Otherwise, it's not a verb. It's not a verb. We call this a gerund, which we're going to talk about much later. Much later on. Much later. It's not going to be soon. How soon are we going to talk about gerunds? Next year. Not this year. So this is a gerund. It looks like a verb. Gerunds look like a verb, but they're not verbs. They are nouns. They are nouns, and you use them all the time. Believe me. For example, you can say running is good for health. There you go. You've just used a gerund right there. It looks like a verb, but it's not a verb. It acts as a noun. Remember, it's a subject. What is good for health? Okay. Yeah, I think I'm talking too much right now. So I think I was able to teach you enough so that you can do the exercise. And soon, how soon? I don't know. Soon, we are going to do something like this in one of our classes. If not on Thursday, we're going to do it next week. So I'm going to give you a passage, and you have to come up with questions, and you will be writing questions, and you will be asking those questions to your classmates, and your classmates have to answer correctly according to the passage. Yeah, so we're going to try practicing that. Okay, so that will be it. I'll see you tomorrow. It's already almost 11 p.m. in the Philippines. Okay. Bye.